Welcome to this episode of Athletic Training Chat. On this episode, we feature Jenn MacFadyen, who is currently an instructor in the athletic training program and kinesiology department at Kansas State University. We got to know Jenn through many a trip to Manhattan, Kansas, or covering track meets at their indoor and outdoor facility during my time at Oklahoma State and Jenn's time with their track and field team. From there, we've loosely kept in touch. It's been quite a while, but we've had a lot of interesting conversations and looking at different things. We talk about a little bit in here and my need to challenge just throwing ice on absolutely everything. But here we get into just some of the changes that are coming in athletic training, what that means, where we think that can take everything, and just generally where the profession's going and why it worked out for Jenn to go from working high-level NCAA track and field to now the role that she is in, and that it's just been a good transition for her and something that's worked out really well. So with that, hope you enjoy this episode. Feel free to leave a comment, send us a message, and again, if you want to be on ATchat, please just shoot us a message through our webpage at www.athletictrainingchat.com. All right. With that, you ready to go?
Let's go.
All right. Well, welcome to this episode of Athletic Training Chat. We are on with Jenn MacFadyen, who is at Kansas State University in that unique color of purple and silver from coming down the interstate there from good old KU. But we are talking today about kind of everything Jenn's done because we got to know each other working Big 12 track and field, a lot of track meets, hanging out, getting through them, some of those long ones. But then now with her transition over to the instructor and advisor role and everything she's seen along the way. So without going too much further, Jenn, feel free to give any more background and kind of how you've ended up where you're at.
Yeah. So, really just to take it back, I started at Western Illinois. That's where I got my undergraduate degree, completed that there. Knew that I wanted to work in Division I athletics. So I took a big leap to Kansas and took a GA position at K-State with their track and field team. And like Joel said, our paths crossed many times, both indoor and outdoor season with track. And so it was great to build that network of people while I was working on my master's degree in counseling and student development with a focus in intercollegiate athletics. And it sort of took a turn. Probably about a year and a half into being a GA, I sort of realized I didn't necessarily want to work in Division I athletics. So it was sort of trying to navigate what my next steps were going to be in terms of a job. And so I was approached the January after I graduated, so January 2015, by the former program director for the athletic training program. And she said, hey, we have a teaching spot open. I think you'd be great for it. What do you think? And at this point, I hadn't committed to any jobs. And I said, why not? And so August 2015 was my first semester of teaching. I'm sure my students are super thankful to be done with that class. We all transitioned together, but I am just getting ready to finish my fourth year teaching. I started advising about 3 years ago, so my first group of seniors is actually getting ready to graduate in 28 days, as they like to remind me. So I still I maintain my certification, maintain my licensure. I do a little PRN work on the side now for a small high school about 35 miles south of here. Basically just using my experiences and my love for athletic training to hopefully inspire the next generation of professionals.
Very nice. I know the first one I had on there is, what lessons and experiences did you feel like you came away with, working Division One, especially track? Because I know this is a conversation I have with a lot of our undergrads is if you think you want to be Division One, you got to go check it out because it
Yeah.
is a little bit different world, especially coming from a Division Three institution where I'm at currently. Just
Yeah.
in terms of resources and time commitment, really are your biggest things in my eyes that I've seen. And just that Division One can be awesome, and there's a lot of people that have great careers and long careers there, but it also is a completely different animal, for lack of a better description. So
No,
I don't know, what did you take away from
yeah,
it?
so I was really excited when I started because Western Illinois is a Division One school, but it's a 1AA. So it was never that like really big school experience. And so big reason I went to Western is, I mean, my parents paid for my education, so I was sort of bound by, hey, where could I go? And so I loved it. Don't get me wrong. I am so grateful that I went there, but I knew if I was going to go on to grad school, I wanted to really go somewhere big. And, K-State really just had that big campus, big school feel, but, it's a very small community and small campus. And so I think with track too, it's even its own unique beast because working Division One track is like working 6 Division One sports at once because it's a team sport, but it's also event individual. And so I think that really put a strain on the time commitment because I mean kids were going all day, all night, and it got to be a lot. And so then I'm also on top of being a GA and going to school and being a student and not just trying to be a student, but trying to be a good student.
Right.
I think that's something I tell a lot of my students as they get ready to be GAs is you can be a student, but then you can also be a good student. I think a lot of times GAs get really bad raps because they're only doing it to work, which I think is, the big reason what we do, but I think a lot of it is I just wanted to be a good student too. So I really dove into my work and 4.0'd my master's program, but that wasn't easy working 60, 70, 80 hours a week and traveling. But it was a different beast. It was, I think the hardest thing for me working Division One athletics was that there was sort of this unspoken rule, quote unquote, if you will, that you had to treat your point scorers, your medal winners, your elite athletes differently than your freshmen that walked on. There was this underlying expectation that if someone came in that was of that sort of elitist status and needed treatment, you were to tend to them right there. And that was a hard personal battle for me because I loved all my kids and loved all my athletes. And it was hard for me to sort of separate them into like, well, you deserve all my time because you score us major points and I'll get to you when I get to you. And so that became really hard and a really big challenge. And I tried really hard to combat that, just with my athletes and try to really show my students that, it doesn't really have to be. But I think that in and of itself is a really tough thing with Division One athletics is there's these unspoken, unwritten rules of that. And that gets to be hard. It's a really personal conflict. And that was really hard for me. And that was probably a big reason why I really started to think, is this really what I want to do for the rest of my life? And then the time commitment was huge. I was at work. I mean, Joel, you worked Big 12 track too. 12, 13 hours a day, 6, 7 days a week. And it's a lot. It is a lot. And track goes, and very few people understand that track is an all year, even in the summer, all my international kids were still here training.
Right.
So it was like, when did you ever really get a break? The best thing I think was we went to Big 12s in Lubbock for 2014 and I was done with my schoolwork and it was like that bus ride down and bus ride back. All I did was like read books for fun. Like I didn't have to read, I think after I got done with nationals in July, I think all I did for 2 weeks was just sleep. Like I just wanted to like regain some stability. But, like you said, I think you really have to go and try it to really see if it's a hat that fits you. And I did, and I don't regret it because I wouldn't be here, if I didn't. But a lot of times my kids get really caught up in the name of a school,
Yep.
These universities and these universities. And I think like you have to go and see it because if you don't see it, you don't know if that's where you want to call home for your next couple of years. So definitely got to try it.
Agreed. Yeah, I haven't missed trying. I haven't had a hard time figuring out how to fill my weekends when I have got some more freedom,
Yeah,
not traveling to a track meet
right.
every weekend of the
Yeah.
year. It
But
hasn't
and
been an
I just
issue.
think too, like, I mean, obviously you and I are in completely different like adult places in our life, but like you're married now. Like, could you imagine doing that lifestyle and trying to be married? Like,
I don't think I'd be married,
no.
and she would agree with that 100%. I'm
I think
fairly positive.
I mean, I'm really glad I did it when I did in my 20s. I think that was like the best time to do it. But
Right.
you know, I think now, and I'm like, I just turned 31 last week, and I was like, there is no way I could still be doing this. I was like, I get tired of just teaching 2 classes. Like, I couldn't imagine traveling anymore. So,
For
but
sure.
I was grateful for it, and I'm glad I did it when I did. So, ultimately taking that away.
Sounds good. One I'm actually very curious about is watching you, and I'm blanking on his name.
Nobu?
Nobu. Yep.
Yeah.
Did some interesting things in terms of treatment wise. Not that they weren't effective, because obviously some of the caliber of athletes you were working with um, were incredible and things worked. Uh, but how has that evolved, especially being on the educational side and
Yeah.
with a big push towards evidence-based practice? I've got my personal feelings on it and have come to some discussions with people about, what evidence-based practice versus effective practice. And so I'm curious now that you've been on both sides of
Yeah.
that to some degree.
Yeah. So just to provide people with a little background, so Nobu's Japanese, and so a lot of what he brought into treatment wise was based on that. They were things that were not born or formulated in the U.S. Lots of international kind of treatments, and so it was very cool to learn a lot of different things. But I think a lot of the times what we were doing was just a means to an end. It was, we are going to do everything we can to get this person to perform without really kind of understanding or being able to really know kind of what's going on. And so it's interesting to talk about evidence-based practice, because I think when I was going through undergrad, this wasn't something we learned about, right? It's this concept that we as athletic trainers, if we didn't know something, we just went out and looked at it. And so it's been something that we've been doing, but I don't remember, now granted it was a really long time ago that I went to college too, but I don't remember like sitting in a class and like talking about evidence-based practice and talking about, developing a clinical question and the 5 steps to evidence-based practice. And so to then have to teach that was interesting, because I'm like, man, I don't remember, really having this great big lesson. And so, I teach the intro class, and so we really get going with evidence-based practice from the get-go. And I just basically tell my students that you have to be able to have an answer as to why you're doing what you're doing. We can't just do things anymore because that's what so-and-so did before us, or that's what the textbook told us, or that's what people have done, for years. I always use the example, Joel, and I know you're a huge proponent of you always have conversations about ice and how, right? So I always use that example in class, and I'm like, guys, what is the first thing you do when you roll an ankle? And they're all like, oh, we put ice on it. And I'm like, why? And it's just like, no one can tell you why. And so I just tell my kids, you have to be able to back up what you're doing, and you can't just rely on, well, this is what they did before me.
Right.
You can't do that anymore, because sometimes these people that come before you, haven't been in a classroom for 10 plus years, and they're going off that mindset of, well, this is what we did then. And so I just try to bring that to my students of, you have to be able to back up, what you're doing and why. And then we also talk about it from a standpoint of, there's, we all have resources and things available to us at different levels. And I try and tell them that, there is probably somebody out there that has found a way to do it the way that you want to, and you need to go find what that looks like and how to implement that. And so, I think evidence-based practice is huge. And I think I implement it early with my kids. We start the research process. We develop clinical questions, because we can't just rely on, well, this is what my athletic trainer did at my high school, without really being able to answer that why. And so It's been fun for me to be able to talk about, because I still do a little bit of PRN work. And so when my track coaches at Council Grove asked me for like a throwing warm up for their throwers, I was like, oh, perfect. And I like dove into the literature and I like referenced all these literature pieces and like put this all together. And I think the coach was like, I just wanted exercises. And I was like, no, but I need to show you why this over others. So I think it's just really being able to justify what you're doing. And we can't say, well, just because anymore. And so I think when I was working track, there was a lot of just because we just needed to get people to perform. And that was hard. And it was cool because I got to use some pretty fun instruments, but to not really be able to understand or to even be able to really know, to even teach my students was hard. And so I definitely take a lot more of an evidence-based approach into my teaching now, since I wasn't able to really do that because Nobu was like, just do it. So.
Yeah, it's one I definitely harp on, with ours being very student run here, is you can come to me with an idea, but you got to have a why.
Yeah.
And the why can be, here's what I'm kind of thinking, but
right.
I don't have it all completely ironed out, and that's okay. And sometimes we get to the throw things at the wall and see what sticks. Like that
right.
happens, but we got to be somewhat systematic in it.
Yeah.
And I agree with you on the research. Like I try and read as much as I can. I've got more saved than I have time to read. It seems like, but
yeah.
sometimes it's hard too, is that research takes so long to catch up with what's coming out, and it's at no fault of its own. It's just the nature of the beast. And right. So sometimes practice-based evidence isn't always the bad thing, especially on the front end. Somebody's got to experiment with it to figure out how to get it to go.
Yeah. And I always try to reassure my kids too that I'm like, you go through a program where you're tested on your skills without being able to use any notes or books. I said, that's not how the real world works. If you don't know something in the real world, you don't know something, and that's okay. And that's when you go and you find out more. And so I think that being able to kind of rest assure those kids that it's like, it's okay to be wrong in the real world. Like, this is where like you find something, you try it, and if it doesn't work, you are evaluating it to know that you need to start over. And so I've also found too that it's a lot easier to talk to parents when you have evidence and research,
right.
Because they're not going to really argue with that. And so not that I've had a lot of confrontational parents, I've been very fortunate with that, but it is nice to be able to say, well, research says, and and parents sort of like, oh, okay, yeah. So.
Yep, had to use that one a few times.
Yep. Working back in the high school setting, for 2 years as a GA, I didn't have to talk to parents. It was beautiful. Now in high school, it's like, oh man, I got to talk to parents. But no, and I think parents are appreciative too, because, they're always like, well, I told them the same thing, but it's a little bit different when it comes from the athletic trainer, or you can back it up with research and say, look, here's what this says. So no, but I agree. I have a lot of bookmarks saved, and I think I just try to get to things as the issues come up or as the topics come up. I think, I preach to my kids, you always have to be lifelong learners. You can never stop learning. We've been doing this for a long time, and, I still think we're learning and we're still doing, and there's never going to be anything to not learn. And so to be that idea of lifelong learners and never wanting to stop reading or researching or, finding out what's going on. And, obviously it's all different. I mean, you implement a lot more practice-based things than I do. And so, but even the research on education has changed a lot too. So
right.
It's just trying to keep up with the times.
Yeah, I think I've always talked to people as why I like it so much is there's no best. There's people that are really good, but I don't know that there's a best because it's just too big for any one person. Like you almost have to specialize in some capacity, but still be good at it all.
Yeah.
There's too much.
It is. Yeah. But that's not a bad problem to have.
Yeah. And that's personally why I enjoy it, is just because there is too much.
Yeah.
Keeps you going.
Yeah.
How have you found things that have been more effective or not in trying to get your students to critically think about things like that? Because that's something that we keep pushing on ours, and some of them get it, some of them not so much. Some of them just want to go by, well, this is what I was told. And we have the discussion of, you got to know what you need to know to pass your BOC, because that is the standard. but then kind of going beyond that
Yeah.
until something new can be created. But what have you found anything that's worked better than other things?
So I think, I mean, I definitely see the students are like, just give me the answers. Like, just tell me what I need to know for this assignment or this exam. And, you know, I'm very fortunate to have a great faculty that teaches beyond that, and really tries to reinforce the idea of, you know, this isn't something that you can just learn once and then just be able to recall it 5 years from now when you're doing whatever, you know. So being able to kind of critically apply it, you know, is huge. And our students, it's a bit of frustration on their end because they're like, I want it. I want the answers. I want to know what I need to know. And, you know, we try to come at it from, you're working with living, breathing humans. Not one person is going to be the same. So you can't have just like a cookie recipe approach to meeting with each person. And so one of the things that we've really started to implement, and this is something that is really going to take off now that we hired a new clinical coordinator, is we're going to do a lot of simulations, really try and create certain scenarios, maybe even collaborate. And this is where this is the beautiful thing about working in academics, is that we can have these like interprofessional cross-department opportunities where we could work with the gerontology department and get that sort of aging population, or we could work with, you know, apparel and textiles and interior design to design facilities, or, you know, we have sort of these great interprofessional opportunities that then we can provide our students with these really kind of in-depth simulations so that they're really critically thinking through the process, and rather than just reading a piece of paper, you know, getting to interact with real kind of living, breathing humans. I think the other side to that is we have some really great preceptors that are letting our students just sort of not necessarily go, but, you know, we've got a great, his name's Brandon Martino out at Junction City High School. I mean, Martino's amazing. I mean, he really lets the kids, he's like, okay, like, you're going to go do it. We have a senior that's getting ready to graduate that was there with him during football season, and Martino would let him run the JV freshman games. Wow, I mean, he was still there, but the student got to run it like he was the certified. And so really being able to create those real life situations for those kids has been huge, because that senior came to me and was like, Jen, like, I'm ready. Like, I am ready to graduate. And I don't think I could have said that being in his shoes. You know, I don't think the words like, hey, I'm ready to go out on my own ever left my mouth. And so those are really great things for us to hear that our preceptors are doing that. And so, but I think we're very fortunate in the resources that we have. I think if you're in a position where maybe that's not an opportunity, I think the simulations and just really, I hate using the word force because that sounds so negative, but your kids have to think outside the box. They can't, no two people are going to be the same. No two injuries going to be the same. They have to be able to think through the process and the why and the how, why you're doing it when you're doing it, how you're going to go about doing it is just as important as knowing what you're doing. So I think we're going to see a lot more simulations here at K-State, some real life patient simulations that are going to help those kids really kind of push the bucket on, you know, not just knowing things, but being able to really think through that process. So we'll see.
I like it. Curious to see how it goes.
Me too. Me too.
Anything else specifically you wanted to cover before we jumped into some of these ATchat questions?
No. I'm good. Let's keep rolling.
So then with that, what does being an athletic trainer mean to you?
You know, I saw that question and I was like,
loaded question.
How do I want to answer that? I think that, you know, if you would ask me this question 4 years ago, I probably would have had a completely different answer than I do now that I'm on the academic side. You know, I think for me, being an athletic trainer now in my current position means being able to excite and create the next generations of professional athletic trainers. You know, I've been here for almost 5 years, and I think that I'm in a position now where classes are good. You know, now I can really focus on some other things. And I think a big thing that I have really dove into is giving back. I think really being a part of your organizations, whether it's campus, statewide, regional wide, whatever that looks like, I think is a huge proponent, because I think that that's how you meet people. That's how you interact with people. That's how you get athletic training from where it is to the next level. Because I think that as great of a position as we as a profession are in now, I mean, I still think we have so much more distance to travel and go. These last 10 years have been huge for athletic trainers, but I definitely think there's more distance for us to cover. And so, I think really being able to give back and help other professionals is a huge proponent of what I think an athletic trainer means to me. And I think 4 years ago, I probably would have had a completely different answer, just coming out of being a GA and not really sure what I wanted to do. And so I've been very grateful that this opportunity has come, because I think it's really helped to reshape and refocus my love for this passion, or my love and passion for this profession. And now I can take that to students. And so I think, being an athletic trainer, I could sit here and tell you that it means diagnosing injuries and treating injuries and all this kind of stuff. And that's just such a textbook answer. But I think it's so much more, connections and relationships and communication than I think I'll ever be able to teach my students, because it's just things that you do, and you get involved and you meet people and you find like-minded people and like interest people, and you take your passions together, and two people's sparks can really ignite a flame, and it really takes our profession to some higher places. I just went to our physical therapy state meeting, really trying to kind of insert myself with those professionals and really try to build some bridges between two professions that I think for so long were just head to head, and really try to bridge some gaps. And I think that, I think being an athletic trainer means just never stopping telling your story and telling why you're valued and why you're important. So
I like it. What advice would you give yourself if you could go back as a young athletic trainer?
Man, oh man, there are so many things I would tell Jenn in college. I tell Jenn in college not to go out so much. No, no, I think one of the things that and these are things I tell my incoming freshmen and I tell their parents, and so I feel good saying it now, is that, as much as you love this career in this and you're excited about it, you need to have balance. I think as a GA, I was so excited and I wanted to do everything that by the time I realized I needed balance, it was too late. And so I think as you're going through your undergrad or your master's program right now, you're a young GA, you're a young professional, there has to be balance. You have to find time to have your out. What is it that keeps you sane and keeps you excited and keeps you wanting to come back? It has to be away from work. It can't be, I'll come in on a Sunday morning when it's quiet. No, it has to be away from the office. And so I tell my students a lot that, it's okay to step away and set training room hours and those kinds of things, because you are no value to people if you are tired or burnt out or your mind's not there. And so I think if 31-year-old Jenn could go back to 21-year-old Jenn and tell her to just, to breathe and just take time and find those outlets of balance, because it gets hard in this profession. It's very easy to slide down a slippery slope of, you do something for one person and then all of a sudden it's like you're staying 4 hours later than you wanted to, or you're coming in 3 hours early when it doesn't necessarily need to happen. And, being able to find that work-life balance, I think, is really important.
I would agree on that. There's definitely a fine line.
Yes, and get a dog.
Also a good way to get some balance. Yep, yeah. I learned that one as well.
You still have your dog?
Yeah, we just got back from the vet this morning, but he's still trucking along.
How is he? Oh, makes me so happy.
He's getting old, but he's still going. Good.
But yeah, that was, obviously, because it's the one person. You obviously have a person that gets excited to see you when you come home, but it's nice to be able to come home and have something that is equally as excited to see you. Doesn't matter if you've been gone all day. So yes, balance in a dog.
Good excuse to get home over lunch to let him out.
I sometimes bring him into the office. My students love him. I'll bring him to class.
Hilarious.
He's the best. Yeah, he has a bow tie and everything. We get real fancy. Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
What has been the most influential resource you have found in your career?
I liked this question when I read that, and I think it's other athletic trainers. I think that I can read and go to journal articles, and I can read and I can find things on the internet, but I think the most helpful resource has been connecting with other athletic trainers. I think social media has been a great thing. There are so many athletic trainers that I follow or follow me on Twitter that I don't think I could tell you that I've ever actually met them. But I think
what are some good ones, if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah. So I mean, aside from like the generic like athletic training kind of pages, NCAA Foundation, that kind of stuff, I recently started following the prehab guys. So lots of like, and so I like that because it's great visuals for my coaches. So I'm like, I can explain to them how to do something, and I'm like, here's a video, like,
right,
go watch it. Just connecting with, I follow Mark Cobley from Iowa State, on Twitter. He's the head athletic trainer there, and he just got inducted into the MATA Hall of Fame. And so being able to find some of those big, Rick Burkholder, Kansas City Chiefs, head athletic trainer, I follow him. He is like super inspirational. He came and actually talked to our students a couple weeks ago for National Athletic Training Month. We did a mental health panel, and he is just like, his passion for this profession is like, I mean, it's a level that I want to get to. And so he's a great one to follow. But really just, I mean, it's any and all athletic trainers. I think I follow some from high school levels and college levels. And I think it's just fun when you can, whether you've met people or not, you share and you share and you reshare, you tweet and you retweet. And I think other people have been, my biggest resource. I think the best thing about working track was that every team had at least 2 athletic trainers. And so that was 20 plus athletic trainers in one place at one time. And so I was like thinking back, I was like, well, obviously you and, there was a GA from TCU and the GA from Texas that just you sort of find your people and you stick with them and you get excited to see each other and you talk through things. And, I still talk to kids that I graduated college with. And I think that the people you meet are probably the best resources, because I think that if they don't know something or someone, they know somebody, because everybody knows somebody.
Yep.
So I think aside from all the textbooks and journal articles and online databases, I think other people have been probably my good. You're a good one to follow on Twitter too.
I don't do very good on keeping up on Twitter. I try.
It's okay. You try. Yeah. But I think other people have been my greatest resource and my greatest asset to getting me where I am. So
awesome. If you could change or eliminate one thing, could be a modality, a common practice, or a mindset in the field of athletic training, what would it be?
Yeah, I mean, I talked about this a little bit when I talked about evidence-based practices. I think we just need to get away from the just because mindset.
Yep.
We do this because that's what someone did to me, or we do this because that's what someone told me. And that can stem from a modality or a treatment. I've had a lot of conversations with athletic trainers at meetings and stuff that I think, the idea of modalities has a very sort of, I don't want to say negative connotation, but I think for so long, people it was ice and sim, right? I mean, just because that's what you did. And so I think being able to get away from that just because mindset and, well, that's what I learned, so that must be right. And really being able to think, through that process of, is this really the best thing for your athlete or your patient? And so I think really getting away from that just because mindset is, and it's hard because I think when I started out as a professional, that was, I only based my GA experience on what I had learned and what I had done. And so I think that it's very easy to fall into that just because mindset, but I don't think it's the best way to go about things. So
yeah, we've tried to implement without trying to offend anybody, and so I use it loosely, like could we do it better, or could it be more efficient?
Sure.
Not that what we're doing is bad or wrong,
right?
But is there something else that could potentially get us to where we want to go faster?
Sure. Absolutely.
So like instead of just on a sore hamstring slapping a bag of ice on it, or shins that hurt, could we actually go and do something beyond that?
Yeah.
That's not necessarily a modality, and just trying to challenge people's thinking on that. And it's breaking a cycle.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think even working with like coaches and stuff, it's hard too, because I mean, they come from a mindset of that just because too. And so, really trying to break down those barriers with coaches of, listen, coach, like that it's just not the best or the, like you said, most efficient way to go about doing that. And so really trying to kind of break those barriers down. And yeah, but I think if I could do away with one thing, it would be that mindset of stop doing things just because.
I like that. I like it a lot. Where do you see the profession of athletic training going in 5 to 10 years?
Holy moly! Well, I mean, I mean, this whole master's thing has been mind-boggling. I think I never would have seen this coming 10 years ago, and so that's a huge thing. And I think just reading up on some of the standards and competencies that potentially could be coming down the pipeline, I really think that this profession of athletic training is going to take off. What I'd really like to see is I'd like to see every high school have an athletic trainer.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of research being done at those levels. And I just think to myself, I'm like, if my little itty bitty 3A rural Kansas high school can get it right, then, surely other people, can hire on these athletic trainers. And
Right.
That's the one place as I see this going is the increase in the secondary school athletic trainers, and there being a lot more jobs and people understanding that value. And two, I see a lot of just other healthcare, interprofessional relationships being built. I mean, I think the APTA-NCAA statement, that joint statement coming out is big. Now, whether that trickles down to state levels is I mean, that's state by state, but we're trying to make that happen here in Kansas. And so I see a lot of joint efforts happening across professions, whether it's PTs and athletic trainers, or physicians and athletic trainers, or chiropractors and athletic trainers. I think I see a lot of that professional relationships really starting to grow and foster and really creating true sports medicine teams around those areas that are able to do that. And that's what I'm trying to do at Council Grove. And I think I'm curious to see. I think the most curious thing I have in the next couple of years is what these kids coming out with a master's degree are going to look like. I think you and I got master's degrees, but we also got 2 years of experience. And so
Right.
I'm curious how those clinical rotations at the master's level are going to foster those sort of experiences to get those kids ready to really go into being an entry-level professional. And so those are things that I'm really excited to see. And I think that's where a lot of those interprofessional relationships are going to happen, is creating those clinical rotations for those future professionals to be able to really create some really intense, immersive type situations. But I would also not be surprised if in 5 to 10 years, athletic trainers are doing IVs. And
Right.
yep. It's something that terrifies me, because I'm like, holy moly, I have to go and learn that. Yeah. And that's a whole other, having to educate those that are going to educate. But I would not be surprised if at certain levels that athletic trainers are doing, even if it's just a bag of fluid or, suturing up somebody on the sidelines. But I would not be surprised if that's coming down the pipeline sooner rather than later.
I agree completely with that.
Makes me nervous. But we've been able to do some of that, not real life, but we have an advanced athletic training class, and we got some suture pads, and we've had somebody come down and we got some phlebotomy kits with some fake arms. And so we've been able to really softly and slowly introduce some of those kind of experiences to our students, so that, I wouldn't call it anywhere close to a real world experience, but to be able to kind of offer some of those simulations has been kind of fun. And I will say there's probably some of my students that even if they learned how to suture, I would just rather sew myself up. But hey, that's why we learn.
There you go. Right.
But yeah, it's been some pretty fun days.
I can imagine.
Yeah. So.
Well, kind of in closing then, anything else you'd like to share? And if you wanted to have people get in touch with you or follow what you're doing, what would be the best options?
Yeah. So, no, I think never stop finding your purpose, and never stop searching for your why, whether it's why you're doing what you're doing, why you're doing what you're doing. Just never stop searching for that why. I'm big on Twitter, not big on Twitter like I have a lot of followers, but I use our Twitter. I'm sort of the official, unofficial Twitter page for our K-State athletic training program. So I always love to share what we're doing here, what our students are doing, what our preceptors are doing, what our college is doing, kind of cool things that showcase athletic training. And so it's EH_ATC, so ATC on Twitter. I mean, I'm on all kinds of social media platforms, but I'm always happy to answer questions for people if they want to reach out and get connected. And I am always down to bring other faces in to meet our students. So I think the more people,
Awesome.
professionals my kids can meet, the better it is. So
Perfect.
yeah.
Well, thank you for being a part of this.
Thanks for asking me. I feel so honored.